Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where we break down the most controversial topics, the most engaging debates, the most interesting subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. There's a lot to talk about. We got to talk about Ebola in Congo. We want to talk about ICE raids in Chicago. And yep, we got a little Diddy update. That's right. Diddy is filing an appeal, but it looks like Donald Trump will be looking at his sentence this week, and there's talk that it may get commuted. We'll talk about all of that. But first, let's go right to Chicago, because tonight, Chicago looks more like a war zone than the Windy City. Federal immigration agents are armed and armored, and they are accused of firing tear gas on peaceful, protesters, journalists, and other professionals. They're also apparently attacking bystanders, innocent bystanders, despite a federal judge's direct order telling them not to. U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis, I'm not sure if you know her name, but she's not happy. She is heated, in fact. She says that her ban on tear gas has effectively been ignored. The order came after videos surfaced showing ICE agents gassing crowds in Logan Square, Brighton Park, Albany Park, and the East Side, all without warning. Now, Ellis says that this stops now. She's ordered every agent in the city to wear body cameras when dealing with the public. This all comes under what the Homeland Security Department is calling Operation Midway Blitz. That's a military-style immigration crackdown that was launched in early September. And officials say it's meant to target the worst of the worst. That's how the officials describe these human beings who are being attacked. But what's actually happening in Chicago, that's telling a different story. The Chicago Tribune reports that on September 30th, a South Shore man named Archie Collins was jolted awake when ICE agents kicked in his door before sunrise. Helicopters hovered, snipers were on the roof, and Collins, a man with no power, no food, and also no criminal record, was taken down by armed agents who never even announced themselves. In just 5 weeks, ICE says more than 1,500 people have been arrested across Chicago and the suburbs. One man, a single father, was shot and killed by an agent who claimed that he, quote, feared for his life. We've heard that one before. Now, Judge Ellis is demanding answers from Washington after learning that ICE's Chicago field director abruptly left his post this week. She's calling in federal agents to explain what happened. She wants them to explain why they defied the court orders and to explain whether Operation Midway Blitz has crossed the line from enforcement to occupation. Americans, you should care about this. Not just Americans in Chicago. You should care about this because this isn't just about immigration. Not that it ever really was. This is about power. This is about who has power, who power is used on, and whether the government can break its own rules in the name of so-called security. The judge says that hearings will begin today and all eyes are on Chicago, a city that is demanding to know whether justice still means anything. Joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Jonathan Jackson, who described what I just described to you as authoritarian theater. It's a powerful term. Congressman Jackson is currently serving his second term in Congress as the representative of the 1st District of Illinois. Congressman Jackson, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Always appreciate your work. Thank you for your advocacy and service.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Talk to me about what's happening here. Authoritarian theater, that's powerful language.
Well, I started with the premise of the military being used in Quantico, Virginia, at the Marine base when the unqualified definitely didn't earn it. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth called in the nation's top generals and military leadership, and he used them basically as a prop to show the military's faces. Had those refined gentlemen, they said, and women that collectively, they said, had over 1,000 years of military experience, and he wants to berate them to talk about push-ups and sit-ups. That's not what the top military officials do and asking them to be in shape. This man is totally unqualified. And then they went on to say, in the president's word, that we're coming to Chicago. And the second thing he said is that that our enemy is within. This is how he described an American city and said that they want to target Chicago. Then the Secretary of Homeland Security says that we're going to be rough and we're going to hit it hard. Then they come up with this term, the Midway Blitz. And people know the Chicago Bears like to have football and are very proud of the history of defense that they have. So it's all theater to use those military leaders as a backdrop. They broadcasted it live in a secure military thing, so they could have done an email or a Zoom call. And so it was shameful that they lowered the standards of the military leadership to using our fine generals and service members as a prop. And he's using that to bring what is illegal, which under the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, to put our United States military on our soil against our citizens. And in that raid in South Shore, they not only kicked in doors where there were immigrants that were here lawfully, they kicked in the doors of US citizens without probable cause and without a warrant. That's why I called it that term.
There's a few things you said there that are really important. I mean, we're going to talk about what happened to the citizens and even the legally documented people. But even for people who might be undocumented, even for people who are here in ways that some people deem to be unacceptable, the level of force being used and the framing of this is going after the worst of the worst seems to be on its face problematic.
Well, what the president said versus what the reality is two different things. He said he was going after the felons, the hardcore MS-13, trade Nicaragua, or whatever gangs and other things. And now we see that he's going after families, not felons. And so this is problematic. While we were downtown at the No Kings rally this past week, somebody sent me a video. Two landscapers in my neighborhood had been abducted. We've got a lady that sold street corn on for many years, for over 20 years that I've known of. She's gotten picked up. We've got children that are afraid to go to school across the city. It's shameful what he's doing, and it's not making the city safer. There are pharmacies and that cannot dispense any medicine. There are people that are afraid to go to food lines. There are people that are staying in houses that were paying rent now that are going into foreclosure because the families aren't able to work. So there's a humane way to deal with this, but seeing men with long barrel military assault rifles jumping out of unmarked vehicles, throwing people on the ground, treating them inhumanely, putting children in zip ties, having citizens across our city smell tear gas, from the journalists to citizens, even to students. The Chicagoans showed up and showed out with over 250,000 people this past week saying, we will resist this. Enough is enough. This level of bestiality and inhumanity will be met with civility and decency. Not one person was arrested. There was not one altercation or incident with police on this past Saturday, of which the president posted on his social media site, and JD Vance, uh, him wearing a crown and a fighter jet, discharging manure all over the crowd. It's insulting, and I do believe that with the release of Congressman Santos, former Congressman Santos, he did that just to do a poke in the eye, again for theater. So that story takes off the headlines because it's so sensational. Um, the earnestness of those 7 million plus people that were out there in the streets. He did that as a diversion. He's a master tactician in
Mm.
creating diversion.
We have to think about due process and rule of law, as some of the people in the comments are saying. No matter who, no matter what someone's citizenship status is, the judge seemed to agree. The judge also seemed to agree that tear gas was off limits. How was the Trump administration? How are these agents? How are these people on the ground able to violate direct orders from U.S. judges?
When you figure that out, please let me know. I mean, the Democrats never should have given what President Trump said, what he's truthfully acted on, the power of the Attorney General to the president. The United States U.S. Attorney, the U.S. the Attorney General is for all Americans. That spot is the people's advocate, and the President Trump said, "No, that's my personal attorney." And he can direct his attorney towards his enemies, his foes. That's called weaponization of the Justice Department. Even when these people are going to be found innocent, they would have spent $1 million in legal fees. So it's another way to put additional burden on you with Letitia James, with Comey, with Bolton. So it's a fear tactic. Um, it's long been known that where you are, Dr. Hill, and New Jersey has always been a very special governorship because most attorney generals are elected. In the state of New Jersey, it's appointed. That's why it's such a powerful governorship in the state of Jersey. Now, the president of the United States always been able to make a recommendation, but it was thought and widely believed that the Senate would use some jurisprudence and some higher level thinking skills and be more tempered and not give a person that had tried an insurrection the entire Justice Department, the entire FBI, and the entire military. And so there's no checks and there's no balances.
No checks and no balances. People are resisting, as you said, with great dignity, great fortitude. My worry, my fear is that the level of civility, civil disobedience, principled, opposition, loyal opposition, all that stuff sounds good, but Trump doesn't play by the rules. And even when you bend, or even when you apply pressure to the system, he'll just change the course of action and not follow the rule of law, not care about anything. Can we protest our way out of this? Can we vote our way out of this in the face of Donald Trump?
Yes, we can. We can certainly vote our way out. So keep in mind that I believe, and the number's rough now in my head, correct me, please. I believe Vice President Harris had 78 million. President Trump had 78, 79 million. It was a 1.5 million point margin, 1.5 percentage points, and also 1.5 million point margin in the swing states. It came down to 800,000
Mm,
person votes. And having said that, one person was 77 and a half, and one person was 79 million votes. 90 million Americans did not vote. So when you ask about where is the hope,
wow.
that also can tell you that none of the above won. People's despair uh, actually lost this margin of the election. So how do we win? You have to overwhelm the polls. We have to
Mm,
start massive voter registration. When you look at what Mr. Charlie Kirk was doing, he had an organization of over 450 people that was well funded, that had a budget of over $90 million. And he was engaging and talking to the biggest demographic, the youth demographic, and he was winning them over. We have a better message, but he was at least out there registering people to vote. We need the Democratic and the liberal and the independent billionaires to fund massive voter registration campaigns. Don't go to the black church on the Sunday before the Tuesday election and tell us to come out. It's a new generation. We've been there, done that. That's over. We need to have voter registration. We have to get families to have this as a cultural value, the right to vote. Brother Lamont, I'm 59 years of age, born in 1966. The voting right was passed in 1965. I am the first generation of African Americans that was born with full equal rights. I
that's
mean,
stunning.
the first time I had it made me shudder. I'm like, whoa. And to see what's happened now is my daughter and your son will have less rights than I've had in my lifetime. And if this case goes against us in Louisiana versus Callis, we have decades of work to do. He is undoing decades of work since 1965.
Let's talk about that because for those that don't know, Congressman Jackson is a strong proponent of voting rights, and he's advocated for measures to protect and expand voter access while combating voter suppression. You have recently introduced a constitutional amendment to guarantee voting as a federal right, largely because of some of the issues you've just been started to raise. Talk to me more about that.
Well, it's so important. It should not be whimsical. It should not be at the level of the state. Most of the young teenagers that are copping a plea for a felony don't realize that they're giving up their their right to have access to voting. Only if you can vote are you a full citizen. And so for the persons that are that have some juvenile indiscretion where prosecutors are making them commit to have a felon so that they can get out, so they can go home, they don't realize how much of their rights to financing for education, financing for housing, finance for contracts, what you can have in your name. They don't realize that it's taking them into second class citizenship. And so I believe that after you've served your time in jail, you've repaid your debt to society. Your voting rights should be fully restored. You are a full American citizen. If you are awaiting trial, you should automatically be given the chance to register and vote because you've not been found guilty. You've been given the presumption of innocence. That's on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, children that are now students that now get a diploma from their high school, they should also be given the opportunity to be registered on the same day, automatic registration. As soon as you
Mm,
graduate, as soon as you turn 18, we have the technology, we have the know-how. You're talking about something that would upend the entire system. They say that when you become an elected official, when you're first running, you are running to get the people to vote for you. And after you win, you determine who you want to vote. And so these lines
ooh,
are carved out. If you open it up, my father has told me, Reverend Jesse Jackson, it's his idea. You expand democracy. That's
yeah.
how you take a child, a student, from just being a student to being a distinguished constituent, because now they're registered voters, and it would be a seismic shift. Make it automatic.
One of the things your father did was, as you talked about, expand democracy, and specifically expand the electorate. What he did in '84 was crucial to seeing some of the advances we saw in '85. I mean, he runs in '84, and Dinkins wins in '85. He runs in '88. Wilder wins in '89. These aren't coincidences. Um, is this about suppressing black voters, black votes? Is it about silencing the Democratic Party? Or is it about stopping the rise of new forms of black leadership vis-a-vis what we saw, in the '80s and '90s?
Would say all of the above. I think you said it very succinctly that it's cutting at the roots. Too many young people have been disenfranchised. Almost one third of African American men all throughout the South, the place where slavery and the vestiges of segregation stayed the longest, have permanently lost their right to vote. That's not coincidental. That's an evolution. There's an unbroken line of history. There's continuity in that level of discrimination, oppression, and segregation of locking us out of the polling booth.
Mm. When we think about the next 2.5 years, I know there's a laundry list of things we have to think about. We've talked about immigration, we've talked about voting rights. What else should we be thinking about as voters, as citizens, to be looking out for in this moment of crisis?
I start number one, number two, number three, voting, voting, voting. I wish I could get on to the second issue, but the second is the first is the third. It's all one issue. Let me show you something, Lamont, since you are taking me to night school in the middle of the night. I don't know why. I love you, man. I don't know why I agreed to do this at nine
Honestly,
o'clock at night. I'm
I,
like, I'm
I
usually
take that
heading
as an
towards
act of
bed at
love.
night. I just said Lamont Hill, I'll do it. Like then they said 9:30. I said tomorrow morning. They said no, tonight. I'm like,
I know. This past my bedtime too. Believe me. Just how much
they
we love the
said,
people.
hey Lamont, they said, you're getting old when the time you go to bed is the time you used to go out. I have no shame. I'm trying to go to. Isn't that
Well,
funny? But Lamont, this is it. This is a voting card.
mm,
When I was a child, I wanted to. I said, wow, how cool is that that you can have a badge? And that's really cool. You can get around a stop sign of traffic or whatever. But then God blessed me to become a congressman in 2023 to get sworn in. And the first 15 votes I had in the United States House of Representatives was for Leader Hakeem Jeffries to become Speaker of the House.
mm,
That was the first time an African American's name had ever been nominated for the speakership in American history, and the power of that. So between 1789 up until we got into the Congress in 2023, it had never happened in 240 some years. Like it's just amazing. I like cried thinking about the power of that, and to
mm.
think that in American history there have been over 12,560 people to have served in the House of Representatives. Fewer than 150 African Americans have ever had the right to vote in Washington, D.C. on the House floor. So this is all about voting. That's what citizens can do. So, how do we win this? We have to make voting a cultural value.
Mm.
Like you need to stop people from coming to your house from Thanksgiving that want to, the crew that comes and wants to get their carry-out plate before they sit down and eat, and the crew that that never helps out. But it has to be a cultural value. We all have to say, are you registered? And a family that votes together will stay together, will be employed together, will have opportunities. So we can make that. Too many people sat at home this last election cycle. We
Yeah.
had the margin of victory, and the nation chose to, as opposed to go with a woman that had character and decency and integrity and experience, they chose a person that was, if you will, in many ways notorious, and they chose that. And so it kind of shows a sickness in America that they could not see the brilliance and competency in Vice President Harris over Mr. Trump. So it was all about money. It wasn't about character. It wasn't about the future. Let
Oh,
me digress for a moment. I saw a sign at the No Kings protest that says, uh, "If Vice, if Kamala Harris were president, we would be at brunch today." As opposed to out here in this big old
it-
demonstration.
that's a good sign. I got to ask you one question, though, just pushing back just a
Mm.
little bit, because as much as I think Kamala Harris is and Donald Trump are not the same thing, there were a couple of issues that made a whole lot of people not want to vote for Kamala Harris. And obviously, one of them was what was happening in Palestine, specifically the Biden administration's response to October 7th, the Biden administration's enabling of Netanyahu and Palestine and the genocide in Gaza. Kamala Harris uh, didn't do enough, in my estimation, to distance herself from Biden, and didn't offer a vision of U.S. foreign policy that would be noticeably different than Donald Trump. And so, for some people, it wasn't about her character uh, in the abstract. It was about that particular issue and her sort of endorsement or complicity with the genocide. I bring that up not to harp on that per se, but to say, does the Democratic Party have a duty in the next election cycle to produce somebody uh who has a radical departure from the status quo? Like your father ran in 84, again, radically different than Carter. Carter was progressive, but he was radically different than Carter on Palestine, but also on welfare, on education, on these issues. Um, it seems like Democrats are pumping out people that don't look that different than Republicans these days.
I would agree with that. I would say in defense, of Vice President Harris and giving her the benefit of the doubt. When you are the vice president, unfortunately, you're like carrying the administration's bags in some ways. And it may not be your own, but it's playing into company, if you will, party politics. I can't stand it. I don't like it. And that ultimately really did hurt, but we never got the full story from her. And Mr. Biden was not like eager to leave. He did not set her up for the win.
That's
Even when he came to the convention, he spent the night on the stage talking all night about his platform and his achievements. He was not bringing his constituents along to be her supporters. You saw labor break against her. You saw many things that were unprecedented. You saw the wealthiest man in the world with the former most powerful man in the world, Elon Musk and President Trump combined, two men attacking this woman incessantly and relentlessly. So yes, there were many mistakes. I went to see her book tour the other day, and she was like brilliant. And I'm sure we all in public life can say what I would have done different that you didn't know. I was on the first wave of people that had signed for a ceasefire, and but that was a different principal position. I'm not running for party leadership. If that's what it costs, I don't want it. You know,
That's
like
why we love you.
and so I am proud to serve the first district. It's the nation's oldest consecutively held district by African Americans in American history since 1928. So in 2028, we're going to have 100 years of African American leadership. And I got to spend more time with you. Let's fashion the agenda. The first district of Illinois in Chicago that has most of the South Side. Let's set the tempo and the pace for what we should be doing.
I love that. I love that. I hear some interesting people are running in some of the other districts in Illinois these days.
How about that? Yeah, I think I can think of a name.
Here we go, man. Well, I'm wishing everybody luck. Keeping my fingers crossed for that. And I just want to thank you for your time, for your energy, and for your commitment to principled resistance to power.
Well, I thank you. You've been principled, and any opportunity I can do anything with you, I'd be more than happy to. And let's speed this time up together. I think Vice President Harris, um, like you shouldn't be a single issue voter. That we always have to continue to try to find the best. And if they can find the good in Trump, and we're looking for the worst in Kamala, like would we be in a different situation now? I even went back to the Louisiana versus Collins case, and October 15th, I was in the United States Supreme Court. Man, I wish there's no recordings of it, only the audio, but not on video. If you could see how persuasively Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was arguing our case, and to think since 1789 until present day, there was only one African American woman even interviewed and nominated and now have been confirmed. So even if there's a bad day on, um, the things that we can disagree with what President Biden did, that was a stroke of brilliance, and I'm grateful for that. I have many other issues I can disagree with, so I hope we don't like take people out on just the one issue. I wish he had given a pardon to the Attorney General Letitia James. She deserved that. If he could do it for his son, he could have done it for many other people.
That's right.
That like he should have pulled up everybody's son that had the same issue, everybody's daughter that had the same issue. Just don't do it for your own. Get that barrel of ink and get that pen out, that auto pen, and start signing. Tens of thousands of people should have qualified for that same commutation, and they deserve that as well.
That's it. And that's what justice is supposed to be about. It shouldn't be about who you have access to, how much money you have, who you know. It should be about a grander principle, and a whole bunch of folk deserved that same treatment because that's what justice looks like. That's what justice requires. And again, justice always also requires Congressman Jonathan Jackson here, not just with us tonight, but in Congress fighting for us, just like he promised he would. Congressman, thank you for your time.
Hey, I thank you, Dr. Lamont. Please, 1632 is the office number in Longworth. That's a my congressional office in DC. I like to think of it, it's a civil rights office depot. So you haven't been there. I'm upset with you about that.
That's
Make
fair.
your way there. That's your office. Anybody that's freedom loving and fighting like you, you got a seat in a room on the hill. So tell
Say
me
less.
so
Next
we
time
can
I'm in
do more.
DC, I'm there. I'm there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I love you, man. Keep up the great work.
Love you back. Family, that was Congressman Jonathan Jackson, part of a long line of freedom fighters, and one of the few people in Congress uh, who stands on principle and is valuing the principle more than his career. valuing the principle more than the money or the attention. We don't agree on everything. We're never going to do that. But I know that he at least operates with principle. I disagree with him, obviously, on the Kamala piece, which is why I try to offer some pushback. But at the core, he gets it. He gets that we can't sacrifice the lives of the vulnerable, no matter how lucrative it might be for us individually. Anyway, we got a couple quick stories before we go. And again, I want to thank Congressman Jackson for his time there. But we got to talk Congo for a second. It's a moment of hope in the heart of Africa. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has officially released its last Ebola patient, a 19th survivor who walked free from a treatment center in Kasai province this weekend, marking what health officials are calling almost universally a remarkable achievement. The World Health Organization says that if no new Ebola cases emerge over the next 42 days, the outbreak, which is the country's 16th since 1976, will finally be declared over. Since September, 64 total cases have been recorded and 45 lives have been lost. But thanks to rapid vaccination efforts and an on-the-ground response that reached even the most remote sections of Kasai, the DRC may have successfully contained one of the world's deadliest viruses in just 6 weeks. There was a time in history where that would have been seen as unthinkable, but not anymore. WHO's Africa director, Mohamed Janabi, praised the country's resilience and said that the victory was only possible through the robust response of Congolese health workers and global partners. More than 35,000 people were vaccinated in the region as the virus spread through Bulape and Moeka. This milestone comes just as communities around the world are preparing to mark Breaking the Silence Congo Week, which is held this year from October 19th to October 25th. The annual event honors the millions lost to decades of conflict while celebrating the courage, the creativity, and the humanity of the Congolese people. Since 2008, Congo Week has united activists, students, faith leaders, and artists in more than 75 countries to raise awareness, to host teach-ins, and to advocate for peace and human dignity across the DRC. And now, as the nation turns the page on another battle, this time against Ebola, the moment feels even more powerful. From surviving war to surviving disease, the Congolese people continue to prove that their resilience is unmatched, and their story is far from over. The world will be watching over the next 42 days because if no new Ebola cases appear, the DRC will have achieved what once seemed impossible, ending an outbreak in record time while standing as a symbol of strength during Congo Week's call for justice, for healing, and for renewal. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I'm also not just crossing my fingers, but I'm also hoping for justice through the work that we do, the investments that we make, the donations that we offer, the solidarity that we show. All right, family, before we go, gotta talk a little Diddy. I don't want to, but I got to. I don't want to, but it's necessary for a couple of reasons. We'll talk about why. Sean Diddy Combs legally, let me do that again, y'all, because one day I'm going to learn how to read. Y'all ready? Sean Diddy Combs' legal team officially filed a notice of appeal on Monday, challenging his conviction and more than 4-year prison sentence that was handed down by a federal judge in New York. Combs was found guilty in July on 2 prostitution-related counts after an 8-week trial that pulled back the curtain on his private life and on his business empire. But the jury also cleared him of the far more serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, and those were the verdicts that his family celebrated in court as Diddy mouthed the words, "I'm coming home." Unfortunately for him, that homecoming did not happen. Instead, the 55-year-old music icon was sentenced to 50 months behind bars, though he will get credit for the year of time served at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. In a letter to the judge before his sentencing, Diddy admits that he did some wrong. He said, "I'm sorry for the hurt that I caused, but I know words alone can't erase the pain from the past." Prosecutors had pushed for 11 years, 11, which was crazy, calling him a man who used his power to exploit others. But his lawyers argued that the charges didn't even apply under federal law. And that's a point that they're going to raise once more during the appeal process. But at this point, the fight moves to a new court. It moves to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, where Combs' attorney, Alexander Shapiro, will argue to overturn the conviction. That's not likely to happen, but you never know. Anyway, Diddy remains in federal custody until then. The Diddy coverage is interesting enough when you think about the trial, the conviction, the sentencing, and all the drama circulating around it. But it has gotten even more interesting now that Donald Trump has entered the fray. According to reliable sources, President Trump is seriously looking at Diddy's case. And he is looking at the case this week. And he's looking at the case this week with an eye toward commutation. That's right. President Trump is seriously considering commuting Diddy's sentence. He's not going to pardon him, which would effectively eliminate or erase or vacate the guilty verdict. Diddy would be not guilty, he'd be innocent, he'd have no criminal record. That ain't happening. But commuting the sentence, changing the length of it, could happen. After being sentenced to 50 months, Diddy would love any help he could get. The judge may commute his sentence to half of that time. Maybe more, maybe less. If I were guessing, Donald Trump is not going to commute it to 0 because there's no need to do that. Instead, he would commute it to the time that's already been served. He would say, Diddy, you've served, say Diddy served 13 months now or something like that. He'd say, well, you have a 12-month sentence or a 13-month sentence or 14-month sentence, something that would get Diddy out immediately, but still look like he gave him a sentence. The question is, why would Diddy do that? Well, he just commuted George Santos's sentence. Santos was locked up this summer. He didn't spend very many days in prison, not even months. He didn't spend that many days in prison. And Santos is accused of all kinds of fraudulent charges, but no acts of violence, no acts of sexual impropriety, the things that kind of don't float so well in the court of public appeal. So if he did it for Santos, there is a precedent. Now, one difference is Santos was carrying the water for Trump. Santos was a Trump acolyte. He was someone who Trump probably didn't care about, but he certainly appreciated that he was willing to echo Trump's politics. Actually, George Santos would echo anything because he just said anything at any time. He's a pathological liar. But Diddy presents a different case. Diddy's a Democrat. Diddy publicly spoke out against Donald Trump in the last year or two. So it could be a steeper hill to climb. But I happen to believe that that's going to work to Diddy's favor. Trump's whole performance of generosity is to look like he's fair and objective and that he just does the right thing, that he's unbothered, that he's not partisan, that he wants to be everybody's president forever. So I think him doing this would say, look, I pardoned a Democrat. Look, I pardoned somebody who didn't even vote for me. Now, why would he do that? Well, it's a cynical ploy to get black men. He's always trying to expand his tent, and he knows black women ain't voting for him. They're too smart for that. But there's a sector of people across race, gender, class, whatever, who are susceptible to Donald Trump. They find him compelling. And so if you can do things for that group or things that that group would find positive, then you can make inroads there. So if Donald Trump is already getting 11% of the black male vote, just say, for example, or 11% of the overall black vote, maybe he now wants 15 or 16. For what, you might ask, since he can't run for anything anymore because he's president in his last term? Well, there's two answers to that. One, Trump might not be willing to continue following this whole democracy thing, and he might be trying to get a third term, or more likely, he wants to be the kingmaker, and whoever he, endorses will win. That's what his mind says. And so he wants to make sure that they owe him a favor, and releasing Diddy will go a long way. Particularly since some people feel that Diddy got a wrong deal. Not that he was not guilty, but that the sentence was too long for what he was actually convicted of. So wherever you land on this, Donald Trump could cynically exploit this. And when has he not done that? So don't think that this is just pro forma. Diddy might get commuted this week by President Trump. If I were betting money, I'd be inclined, and I had to just gun to my head, pick one, I'd say, yeah, he's going to do it. I'm not, I think it's 60-40 right now, 55-45, but I think he's going to do it. And it's not just because of political calculations. I'm also curious to know what Diddy knows about Donald Trump. They've hung together, they partied together, they've been in the same city for a long time. And there was a time when they were in the same city and they were both outside as, I don't know if Trump was single, but outside. They were in them streets. And I don't know what Diddy knows. So sometimes a favor for a favor is just what you got to do. All that said, this is a nasty system. And Donald Trump is making it nastier. Ugh. All right, family, that's it for tonight. I love talking to y'all. This was such a good show, such a great conversation. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Hang with me here on Night School every Monday and every Wednesday. We are getting it in. Also, as you know, we started the Patreon. That is a way to help you help me. That is a way to get more content. That is a way to keep this Night School train going. You see at the top of the screen right there, you see a QR code. Click that, and you can get all the info you need, or you can join me through by going to going to patreon.com/Marc Lamont Hill official. All those things will get you there, but go to Patreon and support the Patreon if you can. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button here, but go to Patreon and help us build. The reason we do this is because we need the economic and financial infrastructure to keep this thing going. We do Night School. I have to pay a staff. We do Night School. We need to edit clips. We need studio space. We need all of these things to make it happen. So your help is coming in multiple ways. Watching the videos is helpful. Clicking like and subscribe keeps the algorithm turning this stuff out, helps us build our space and expand our footprint on YouTube. All that is important. But the Patreon is how we provide or receive the financial support necessary to keep this thing going. So please, family, if you want to support the channel financially, please go to Patreon. And for only $10, you can get a sponsor level membership. There are other levels that we'd love for you to support, but going to Patreon and getting one of those is incredibly important. And we don't just say thank you. You get access to new content. You get access to the office hours show, which on a regular basis comes out, where we do deep dives and we break down information like Night School, but with a deeper dive, and with sometimes with me and sometimes with other scholars and opinion makers and idea givers who help break this stuff down. We also over there have a segment called "And Another Thing," where I give deep dives or expanded conversations or commentaries on things that we've already talked about. So you'll hear me on Piers Morgan, or you'll hear me at Joe Budden Podcast talking about a thing, and we'll drill down even more. Just last night on the pod, or last week on the pod, it aired on Friday. There was a conversation about intellectualism and elitism, and there was a whole there was a whole exchange between Joe Budden and Angela Rye, the Joe Budden Podcast and the Native Land Podcast, and there was a lot of good conversation to be had there. But we ran out of time, and I had more to say, and so I did a 30-minute commentary on the Patreon. My now viral moment with Queens Flip is explained on the Patreon, but it's not just JBP stuff that we talk about over there. I'm talking about whether Donald Trump has brought peace in the Middle East. I'm talking about what the Ready to Die album looks like with, a few decades of historical distance. I'm talking about Van Jones's recent political shifts. I'm talking about everything: culture, politics, education, religion, relationships, all of it on the Patreon. Some of it will be out here in Night School, but the rest is on the Patreon. So you get access to that by clicking that QR code. And if you click that QR code right over here, you will get everything you need. If you don't know how to click that QR code, because I don't know how to do it sometimes, I'd be struggling in the restaurant, just go to patreon.com, Marc Lamont Hill official, or do a Google search from Marc Lamont Hill's Patreon. It'll be there. Make sure you sign up. A lot of cool stuff, not just new content, but also conversations, live streams, and as the levels go up, you get more cool stuff. So please, family, go to that Patreon and help me build this thing out. Otherwise, I'll see you all on Wednesday night. We got great guests. We got great conversation. Much more to come. Peace.